absolute value refers to a number's distance from 0. Okay, so let's take a look at this first problem. What this says is the absolute value of -12 equals something. And this one over here says the absolute value of +12 equals something. And what we need to do is figure out what these two absolute values equal. It's important for you to know that these lines around the numbers stand for absolute value. Okay, this is the symbol that we use for absolute value. You put these straight lines on either side of the number. So the absolute value of -12 is referring to how far away from 0 is -12. So let's put that on our number line. -12 would be right here. And let's figure out how far away from 0 that is. Well, if I start at 0 and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 units. So -12 is 12 units away from 0. So that means my absolute value is 12. Now let's look at +12. What is the absolute value of +12? So let's start by putting +12 on our number line and figure out its distance from 0. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 units. So +12 is also 12 units away from 0. So we would say the absolute value of +12 is also 12. And this works not only for whole numbers, but it also works for rational numbers. So let's take a look at these decimals and see what we're talking about. So I have the absolute value of 6 5/10. So let's find 6 5/10. That's a +6 5/10, which is the same as 6 1/2. So I'm going to stick that right here on my number line. And if I want to know the absolute value of 6 1/2, I want to know how far away from 0 it is. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1/2 units. So the absolute value of 6 1/2 is 6 1/2. It's 6 1/2 units from 0. Now what about the absolute value of -6 1/2? So again, put that on your number line. -6 1/2 or -6 5/10. And it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1/2 units away from 0. So the absolute value of -6 1/2 is also 6 1/2. Both of these numbers are 6 1/2 units from 0. Remember when we talked about opposites, we said they have to be the same distance from 0. So numbers that are the opposites of each other have the same absolute value. Now let's look at one more thing. Let's look at comparing these numbers. Which is greater? So before we talked about absolute value, if I just wanted to compare -8 5/10 to +2 1/4, I would say that 2 1/4 is greater than -8 5/10, or -8 5/10 is less than 2 1/4, because 2 1/4 is here, -8 1/2 would be here, and I can see that 2 1/2 or 2 1/4 is further to the right. But now we want to talk about comparing not the values of the numbers, but we want to compare the absolute values. So we want to compare the absolute value of 8 5/10. I'm sorry, of -8 5/10 to 2 1/4. So the absolute value of -8 5/10, if I mark that, that would be right here. -8 5/10, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 1/2 units away. So the absolute value of -8 5/10 is 8 5/10. The absolute value of 2 1/4 would be right here, which is going to be 1, 2 1/4 units away. So what I want to do now is compare these values. I want to compare 8 5/10 to 2 1/4, because I'm not comparing the actual numbers now. I'm comparing their absolute values. What I'm looking at is to see which of these two numbers is a greater distance from 0, and that's going to be 8 5/10. So if I were going to compare these, I would say the absolute value of negative 8 5/10 is greater than the absolute value of 2 1/4 because negative 8 5/10 is further from 0. It is a further distance from 0, so it is a greater distance from 0.